Does he have a phone? Which, okay. Just ask him. We could charge this and then return it to him. I'll get mine tomorrow. Let me try this one. It was. Oh, yes. It will soon be connected and then we can. Are we ready?
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back again to our workshop session. So the next session will be about the research design and data collection, right?
We will still, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then how to do it.
Yes. So I directly pass the mic to Rekha. Please, Rekha.
Are we feeling fresh? How was the meal? Did you enjoy lunch? Yes, I know. I'll tell you. all sit down and get. I'll tell you a small joke about a friend of mine who migrated to Australia some 30 years back. And she started as a school teacher in teaching English to international students. And around that time, she was teaching where students were doing bridging course to move from school into university and needed help with English. And most children that time would come from China, and these children were single. If you remember, China had single child policy. And according to her, her teaching period was just after the break. And children would eat big meals and sleep in her class. And she would be going around, get up and listen to me. And that time I realized when she said, I used to do that, that itself tells us that she had not set up, despite she is a good teacher, there was something missing in the learning environment that students were not feeling motivated, energized, instead sleepy with the big meal. And that was the system change she had to do and where I helped her. And it really worked for her. Now, moving on from where we were last, when we talked about system maintenance and system change, her only change was getting students engaged and changing the learning environment. So when learning environment research started, the first questionnaire ever made was classroom environment scale. And it had 9 measures and responses were true or false. Like, you feel motivated in the classroom, yes or no. And some of the questions were negatively worded. And in that negatively worded, they were required to reverse the scores. And the students used my teacher is ideal or not. So what happened is, as the research progressed, there were certain shortcomings found in this questionnaire. And the questions being asked were only for teacher-centered classes. Obviously, this questionnaire was made in 1970s, when most of you wouldn't even have been born, and some of us would have been in primary schools. It never showed the validity, factorial validity, and that's what happened in the future questionnaires which were developed. So you can see when something starts, it starts for a change, but that change may not be ideal. That will still need change, which we call system maintenance and system change. So then my class inventory was made, followed by science laboratory environment inventory, which Yuli has published in this area. What came as a major change was questionnaire on teacher interaction. Questionnaire on teacher interaction was developed by Koul in the Netherlands. And the first questionnaire, as again coming to your question, first QTI had 123 items. Then it was reduced to 78. Then the next version came of 48 items. 78 was American version. Then an Australian version was made out of 48 items. And the 48 item version was used in 50 over countries. And more recently, although I haven't seen much published in that, this QTI has been reduced to 24 items. But it's been translated in many, many languages, published and used widely. In Netherlands, forget the name of the university, that university had a full-fledged department where they were only working on teacher interactions. While this research happened, researchers found that researchers found that we didn't have a instrument where college and university students can be targeted and research, so instrument was made for them as well and validated. So when we talk about the My Class inventory, looked at satisfaction, friction in the classroom, competitiveness, difficulty, and cohesiveness. I'll go fast here. SLI, which is Science Laboratory and Environment Inventory, looked at student cohesiveness, adopting it from M.Si, open-endedness, integration, rule clarity, and material environment. You can see these scales are very much involved with or are reflecting what you need in the laboratory, like are students cohesive? Is there open-endedness? That means are students being given freedom to do more than that, clear, or not being very teacher-centered, but given scope for student-centeredness? Is there rule clarity, and do they have enough materials? If we are taking them to the laboratory, is there the required material? Coming to college and university classroom environment, it is personalization, involvement, student cohesiveness, satisfaction, task orientation, innovation, and individualization. Anyone, I know some of you may be working in higher education. If you want to use this in your research, you can pick and choose which scales you want to use in your study. But if you look at them very closely, personally, I feel there is an overlap between personalization and individualization. Feel free to drop some of the scales. So again, I'm again reiterating that students spend 20,000 in the classroom by the time they finish their undergrad degree. And what happens in these classrooms makes the students' lives. And it's our duty as teachers to give them a positive environment. So what happens in learning environment research is students provide feedback by completing a learning environment questionnaire, which you can call an inventory, you can call it a tool, you can call it a survey, but it has set questions, responses on a Likert scale. It can be anywhere between 1 to 4 or 1 to 7. I tend to stay away from, there was a time when I was keeping my responses 1 to 4 and not to keep anything in between, undecided, because there are lots of responses where they want to stay in the neutral zone. I was not giving that scope to students, but it's your choice. And there are many, many questionnaires which are available, and many of them have versions like actual and preferred. That means you ask their perception about the class and what would they prefer to happen in their classrooms. And the research has shown that there is always a difference between actual and preferred. And going into the positive scales, students always want more of the preferred scale, more. And when we also did research between students' perception and teachers' perception of the same class, teacher always thinks that she or he provides better learning environment than the students. And closer the congruence between students' actual and preferred perception, the more students, it will be a better attitude, and their achievement will be better. That means if our learning environment is closer to students' preferred version, that means we have a good learning environment. That will be our aim to achieve. Now coming to QTI, as I told you, it's a 48 item questionnaire with 8 scales, and it measures students' perception of the nature and quality of interpersonal relationship between teachers and students. We have been talking about this since morning. What's the relationship between students and teachers? Teacher is very important. When we have done research in this space, same teacher can be perceived very positively in one class. Suppose Rekha is a science teacher and I am teaching science, year 8 science, and my school has 8 science classes. I teach in 5 science classes, same subject, same person, but the students are different. Perception can be very different in different classes based on the type of students. So we always think that as a teacher, I will identify my weaknesses, but every class is different. Students in every class are different. In one class, students will want me to do something very differently than the other class. So I do need feedback from all the classes. That's what, or I do my research this year and think, oh, I know the feedback, what I should be doing. No, your students next year will be different. So it is worth it. It doesn't take a long time. It takes maybe half an hour to get that feedback from students, which will give you insights into what needs changing or what needs keeping. Do you agree with me? Yeah. So if you looked at the 3 dimensions of learning environment research, here in questionnaire on teacher interactions, it focuses mainly on relationship dimension, which is the relationship between students and the teacher. And we have also developed a graphic representation of interpersonal behavior, which is the positive and negative behaviors. And you can see 6 items, and it has 8 scales and 6 items in each scale. I'll show you, I think, the next one. If you look at this half of the graphic representation, it has all the positive behaviors like leadership, helping friendly, understanding, and responsibility. On the other hand, you have the negative behaviors like strict, admonishing, dissatisfied, student is not satisfied in the classroom, or thinks is uncertain. And let me get up and see. If you look at exactly opposite of side is out. This side is dominant.
Rekha, someone in the Zoom cannot hear. We didn't use. No,
I'll sit. No, I'll use the pointer.
can use it.
As the teacher in me gets up and
Yeah,
we are teachers. We are teachers. So if you look at it, here is the leadership. Exactly opposite is uncertain. Student responsibility, exactly opposite is strict. Helping friendly is dissatisfied. So in a way, it is mirror of the opposite behaviors in the classroom. So ideal figure would be that teacher is high in these behaviors and low in these behaviors. But at the same time, when we look at a really good teacher, for strict, we want around 50% mark, which is, you want to explain, Yuli?
Bapak Ibu, ini yang tadi saya ceritakan tentang QTI. Jadi nanti kalau Bapak Ibu kasih ke siswa Bapak Ibu akan terlihat guru seperti apa gitu ya. Nah nanti ada arsirannya, nanti kita bisa lihat kan arsirannya. Nah yang biasanya sebelah kanan tuh positif, lihat positif kan, leadership-nya oke, helping friendly-nya oke, kemudian understanding, student responsibility yang saya bilang tadi. Ini guru yang memberikan kesempatan kayak misalnya kalian mau belajar apa, kayak diferensiasi learning ya, aspek itu kalian mau belajar seperti apa. Nah, itu student responsibility. Nah, yang sebelah kiri itu yang negatif. Nah, buat kita kadang strict itu positif gitu. Nah, buat mereka strict itu ya ke arah yang negatif. Nah, kemudian admonishing tuh kayak kamu gitu aja nggak bisa. Jadi kita kalau ada student perform apa kita kayak dia gitu aja kok kayak gitu ya. Nah yang mirip sama dissatisfied tuh kayak nggak puas gitu, anak-anak ini memang cuma bisanya begini aja gitu. Itu bahasa ininya ya. Nah yang paling terakhir tuh uncertain. Jadi kalau ngajar nggak jelas gitu. Kita ubah deh. Kita nanti aktivitas. Jadi kita ngajar di depan nggak punya planning yang ini gitu ya, nggak well plan, kemudian kita ngerubah sebenarnya nggak apa-apa, tapi kita kelihatan banget kita tuh sebenarnya nggak yakin dengan apa yang kita lakukan di depan kelas. Nah jadi yang negatif itu sebelah kiri ya, itu dianggap negatif, itu dianggap perilaku kita yang nggak pas sebagai seorang guru, behaviornya. Nah nanti kalau Bapak Ibu minta, nah kalau nyebarin kuesioner juga bilang misalnya ini nilainya buat Pak Muji ya, jadi gitu ya. Jadi jangan nih disebarin aja QTI ini yang dinilai Pak Lukman, Pak Muji, apa Bu Yuli gitu ya. Jadi ingat ketika nyebar kuesioner ini buat nilai saya ya, ini buat nilai karena ketika siswa menyampaikan siapa sih yang strict kan yang dinilai personal gurunya gitu. Nah nanti Bapak Ibu akan melihat arsiran profil Bapak Ibu. Nah setiap guru selama saya penelitian di QTI itu setiap guru unik-unik. Ada yang kelihatan banget dia ke kanan, ada yang kelihatan agak balance, dia negatif juga, positif juga gitu. Ada yang memang negatifnya lebih besar, leadership-nya bermasalah segala macam gitu. Nah ini banyak dipakai ya. Mungkin nanti kalau mau baca artikel saya yang ada di layar itu juga bisa nanti Bapak Ibu bisa lihat profilnya gitu. Yes, Rekha.
Yes, so moving ahead, like I had kept the next picture showing opposite of each other, which is negative and positive behaviors. Moving on from there, so when we look at the teacher behavior is in leadership, we look for does teacher establish the rules, make expectations clear, hold student attention, challenge students, use tutorial style format, or encourage participation in what's safe and non-threatening learning environment.
Yeah, probably I would like to add this one,
Yes.
Rekha. So Bapak Ibu yang leadership ya contohnya harusnya kalau ngajar sampaikan dulu tujuan pembelajaran, kasih tahu aturannya, kalau kamu telat berarti kamu kalau enggak telat, jadi aturan-aturan, dan sebenarnya kita udah melakukan itu dan itu adalah ciri-ciri yang sebenarnya aspek-aspek dari leadership. Nah terus kayak challenge student, jadi jangan mikir misalnya nggak usah kasih nih soal yang susah-susah yang rendah-rendah aja gitu. Challenge itu ternyata men-challenge siswa untuk dia bisa achieve hire itu adalah positif leadership gitu dari seorang guru. Ya, kemudian yang hold student attention kan biasa ya, meaningful constructivism dan sebagainya. That's all,
So
Rekha.
who's the leader? A teacher is a leader. Teacher is a leader, but leader should have these qualities. I'm currently writing a book chapter on women in leadership. And this has been really helpful for me. So same is with helping friendly. We try to be, so who can be a good helping friendly teacher? Teacher who shows personal interest in each student, not ignoring the students, using a little bit of humor and inspire confidence and trust in students. Help students set and meet goals. It's not only setting the goals, but how are you meeting those goals? I'll finish my homework, small, as I said, small steps. And teacher establish rapport with students, results in students' motivation to engage in authentic learning. That means even the tasks which teacher chooses have to be authentic. Authentic means these have to relate with students' own experience. If I have to run a class, let's take it as simple, since it's a group of chemistry educators, we start talking about chemical reactions. And then we use example of Western cookery. Is that more, relatable than what is happening in Indonesian cookery? I would use examples from Indonesian cookery. When in fact, over lunch, we were talking about some of the chemical reactions happening in food when we do it. So why don't we use the local when we're using the fermentation? Use them. And that's authentic learning happening there. Understanding what should who's an understanding teacher who listens and deep listens with genuine interest and show empathy. Empathy is very important for social emotional well-being. Accepts apologies and shows confidence in students. Sometimes students will say, sorry, teacher, I don't accept it. No, if student has said sorry, accept it, show confidence. Oh, thank you. I know you won't repeat it again. And that's going to be understanding. So teacher has to gain students' trust and be approachable. The school I am working in, recently, as I told you, we have nearly 200 sessional academics. When earlier this year, when the announcement was made that Rekha will be the next deputy head of school, the main comment coming from these sessional academics was, oh, so good, because Rekha is approachable. So I felt that I had already gained their trust. And it shouldn't make me proud. It should make me more responsible for keeping that trust so that they will feel free to come to me if there is a problem. That's that sort of relationship we have to develop with our students. And there should be an environment of mutual respect. I can't expect my students to respect me unless I respect them. So give what you want for yourself. That has to be borne in mind all the time. Teacher behavior, student responsibility and freedom. Do we give freedom to students where they can grow? and they give them freedom of choice. Like you give an assessment to students, is there any choice there where they can move around and negotiate? And do they have multiple choices? And are we encouraging them to take responsibility for their own learning? It has, if we give them responsibility for their own learning,
Oh, bro.
can you understand me? Is there anything I can help with? Okay, so that's very important. Do we give them responsibility for their own learning? And at the same time, I know it's becoming a little boring. Would you like to add anything more in this slide? Anyone? People at the back. May I know your name, please? Yeah. Hi, Juliana. Would you think that as student responsibility and freedom, as a teacher, you would like to add anything more here?
Yes. I'm sorry, Miss. I just discussed with my relative teacher. I think this is very important for me to reflect myself as a teacher, to get some apa sih? To get something that who am I in front of in front of our students. So for me, I think I want to use this instrument to reflect myself as a teacher, to fix myself as a teacher to better.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really, really, really very encouraging to know. But let me tell you, there is no perfect teacher. There is no perfect person. There is always scope for improvement. There is no perfect learning environment. Some students may get 100 out of 100, but there will be that 100 out of 100 is in set curriculum. There can be still scope for more learning. Yes, you're wanting to be a perfect teacher, and that's where I'm again coming to system maintenance and system change. And that's what this research can afford you. Those are the affordances. Strict, this is very common especially in Asian cultures. Teacher has to be strict. What does that mean? Strictness, teacher has to have the norms and set rules. What do we do in the classroom or what we can't do? And what we can't do will not be allowed to be done. And there comes the inflexibility. Like students, we can have lots of examples around that. And one of them is, yes, the classroom has to be silent. I don't believe in that. In a classroom where activity is going on, learning is going on. And where learning is going on, there won't be silence. It depends on the type of activity being taken over in the classroom. There was a time in 60s and 70s, there is a lovely, lovely paper written by one of our colleagues, Ken Tobin. Yuli has worked with him as well, is when he started working in 70s as a school teacher, the good teachers were considered whose classrooms were quiet. But tell me why the classroom has to be quiet. If the science classroom can never be quiet, where there is activity going on, something is being done. So those are generally the strict, and that's why I said around 50%. And we do use mixed method studies. They came up somewhere in early to late mid 1990s. Till then, most of the learning environment research was only quantitative, but then what came? We are dealing with students. We are dealing with humans. Humans have emotions. And these behaviors need to be observed. We need to talk to students. We need to talk to humans. And the qualitative feature was incorporated in learning environments, which could be student interviews or classroom observations. In recent times, we have moved more towards the focus groups, because in interviews, we felt that focus group has its own disadvantages, but in interviews, we felt that students at times were not very responsive. But in focus groups, it is 5 students, one says something and other one will further add on to it, and all getting different messages. So what do we look into the learning environment research? We look at student outcomes and environment. There we can do evaluation of educational innovation, like if you are changing something, which is an innovation, and evaluating whether it has made a difference or not. You can have the pre-test, have an intervention, post-test, and see the difference. Transition between different levels of schooling, which can be primary and secondary, which can be private and public, even cross-national studies. There were quite a lot of studies done where data in different countries was compared, and it enables teachers to improve the classroom learning environment when we do these studies.
Should I add, Rekha?
Yes.
Yang the last slide. Bapak Ibu, jadi ini cara gunain instrumennya. PTK juga bisa dipakai. Jadi misalnya PTK sebelumnya Bapak Ibu pakai ngukur learning environment-nya seperti apa. Kemudian Bapak Ibu lakukan action, kemudian diukur lagi. Nah ini lebih simpel sebenarnya untuk PTK Bapak Ibu guru ya. Kemudian yang Rekha, where is the slide Rekha?
Which one?
The last one.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So nanti juga Bapak Ibu tadi kan ada association ya. Biasa kita kan hubungan antara hasil belajar dengan gitu ya. Nah itu lingkungan belajar bisa jadi penelitian kuanti, hubungan korelasinya. Bisa jadi kadang mereka pernah juga ngambil satu aspek atau satu lingkungan belajar itu. Nah yang di science di laboratorium misalnya ada namanya Science Learning Environment Inventory. Itu ngukur gimana Bapak Ibu misalnya ngajar kimia, tapi praktikumnya nggak nyambung isinya sama yang diajarin di kelas gitu. Nah itu ada pertanyaan seperti itu, relevansi. Aspek relevansi itu keterkaitan materi di kelas sama praktikumnya gitu. Nah atau satu lagi tentang rule clarity di instrumen itu tentang kalau praktikum dikasih aturan yang jelas nggak sama gurunya gitu ya, atau sama dosennya. Terus alat-alatnya, gimana material alat-alat di labnya itu mencukupi atau enggak. Jadi ada pertanyaan-pertanyaan seperti itu di tentang pengukuran lingkungan belajar laboratorium. Nah itu tadi Rekha kan bilang evaluation of educational innovation, itu juga bisa. Apakah kita bikin inovasi, program-program, ini berdampak tidak? Nah ini kan kebetulan Bapak Ibu baru lihat yang classroom, ada lagi yang sekolah. Jadi kalau misalnya mengukur what is the David conduct on the school organization, the instrument name, the school environment, not the classroom. but the school one. Yeah, what's the name? I forgot the name of the questionnaire.
School level.
School level, ya. Jadi ada yang levelnya ngukurnya kayak hubungan kita dengan kepala sekolah, hubungan kita antar guru gitu, atau antar dosen dengan peraturan-peraturan. Jadi ada yang levelnya sampai level sekolah juga. Kemudian itu transisi. Jadi misalnya Bapak Ibu meneliti yang SD sama SMP, kan lingkungan SD sama SMP itu beda. Jadi beda jenis sekolah, bisa private, misalnya public, negeri sama swasta. Atau mau buat apa? Oh, sekolah Islam sama sekolah bukan Islam, maksudnya yang public, yang umum, atau sekolah Kristen. Jadi itu bisa juga kita lihat ada nggak beda lingkungan pembelajarannya gitu. Kemudian ada juga persepsi, biasanya persepsi, misalnya persepsi laki-laki dan perempuan, biasanya sih nggak jauh beda. Persepsi siswa laki-laki terhadap gurunya atau persepsi siswa perempuan terhadap gurunya. Yang agak beda tuh biasanya persepsi guru sama persepsi siswa. Contoh guru kan nanti kita ngisi kuesioner, saya adalah guru yang leadershipnya bagus gitu. Terus murid kita, mahasiswa kita atau siswa kita pas ngisi ternyata kita bukan a good leader gitu. Nah kadang guru-guru atau dosen tuh terlalu positive thinking gitu. Biasanya nilainya lebih tinggi daripada persepsi siswanya. Nah itu agak ada gap tuh biasanya selama ini gitu. Kemudian cross national itu kayak Rekha misalnya, Rekha di Australia, saya di Indonesia misalnya, atau antar country comparative studies, atau yang satu di Papua, yang satu di Aceh, yang satu di Jakarta. Jadi kita mau compare lingkungan belajarnya, bisa juga seperti itu. Jadi cross national. Jadi memang variasinya. Yang satu lagi yang kayak yang guide tadi, enable improvement, biasanya misalnya yang PTK tadi ya, atau misalnya kita kalau kuanti misalnya kita ada time series mungkin beberapa kali improvement, itu juga bisa dilakukan. Jadi gitu Bapak Ibu. Nah, kuesionernya ada semua di link ya, beberapa sih. Kalau Bapak Ibu ternyata Rekha, I think you can open up the lab, the international journal, so they know the ya. Nanti Rekha buka international journal di learning environment-nya, jadi Bapak Ibu bisa kayak apa sih misalnya jurnal itu, jurnalnya Q1 Scopus. Jadi memang orang-orang yang meneliti fokus ke lingkungan belajar, dan kebetulan memang di Indonesia dari UNJ, baru di UNJ. Jadi kalau di kampus lain mau buka atau Bapak Ibu mau meneliti fokus ke situ, karena variasinya banyak ya instrumennya. Jadi dari ada yang tentang konstruktivis, ada yang mau tentang sikap, ada yang mau emosi, ada bahkan terakhir waktu itu bimbingan Rekha kalau nggak salah tentang religious. What is Tom instrument on the religious belief ya?
There is one
Tom pipe on the biotechnology. Jadi kan tapi Christian belief yang udah ada, yang Islam belum ada. Jadi bimbingannya Rekha S3 tuh bikin instrumen tentang konflik antara sains sama religion kayak teori Darwin gitu. Nah, itu lingkungan belajar seperti apa konflik-konflik agama dibawa ke kelas. Tapi baru Kristen, karena kalau udah ngomongin belief religion kan beda konteks ya. Nanti item-itemnya dia. Nah, ini instrumen jurnalnya Bapak Ibu, Learning Environment Research, dan memang Barry Fraser itu dosen Rekha juga, dosen saya juga gitu. Nah, Barry Fraser itu yang buat jurnal ini ya. Nah, Rekha di sini
editor.
You are currently
I'm the regional editor. I'll see if
Oke, nama Rekha ada di situ kalau nggak salah. Tapi saya lupa jenis-jenis editornya. Editorial board ya, gitu ya. Oh, editor in chief ya. Bisa, bisa. Jadi biasanya kalau yang SD, SMP, SMA, SD juga agak susah. Biasanya 2 ngisinya, kita ngisi sendiri. Saya udah buatin untuk Classroom Emotional Climate. Bapak Ibu isi sendiri. Terus Bapak Ibu kasih link itu ke mahasiswa Bapak Ibu apa ke guru Bapak Ibu gitu. Nah nanti kalau nanti kalau kindergarten aku tanya ke Rekha ya. Bisa banget. Jadi senengnya saya refleksi misalnya nanti Claudia ngisi pakai kuesioner. Nah, terus Claudia tambah self reflection di setiap item itu. Apakah saya leader yang bagus? Nah, itu udah penelitian sendiri tuh. Self reflection. Karena kan aspek apa yang kita refleksikan, item yang ada di QTI for example gitu. So she would like to using like QTI as self reflection because it is in the kindergarten. So it is impossible for the student to feel it. So using the dimension, they do the completing the questionnaire and do the reflection on the qualitative one. Yeah.
You can do that. You can do that.
Yeah.
We had one project where all the teachers in school, this was in Singapore, where the school had nearly 50 teachers, and they did QTI. The QTI was changed to principal interaction questionnaire on principal interaction, QPI, where teachers gave feedback on principal's behavior in the school. That you can do for yourself and see the image. Or if there are many teachers in your school, ask everyone to do it. And you can see how every teacher perceives themselves.
Ada pertanyaan lagi Bapak Ibu?
You may be happy to see in this journal, the regional editor from Europe is also an Indonesian.
Ya Pak Ridwan.
Ridwan.
Bu, bisa
Ridwan itu di Groningen, tapi orang Indonesia yang mengajar di sana.
Prof, bisa nanya Prof?
Ya, silakan. Mau bisa lagi.
Baik. Bagaimana caranya? Misalnya kan di KTI itu kan ada 8 dimensi itu. Nah, kalau kita melakukan proses uji coba di suatu sekolah, tadi kan ada dilihat dari segi misalnya 2 sekolah yang berbeda latar belakang agama, dilihat dari segi prestasi dan tata cara di lingkungan itu sendiri. Cara mengujinya gimana? Misalnya kan 8 itu kalau dilaksanakan secara serentak, itu kan tidak terlalu efektif. Tapi kalau dilaksanakan per dimensi, per skala gitu. Misalnya guru A, kita uji skala kepemimpinannya misalnya. Atau bagaimana kalau menurut pandangan Prof gimana itu? Kalau kita misalnya melakukan proses selama 1 semester, apakah kita menggunakan mixed method atau kita menggunakan action research?
Jadi mau compare sebelum sesudah atau enggak?
Enggak, tapi maksudnya kan beberapa dimensi itu kita mencobanya di dalam prakteknya itu apakah per dimensi atau kita sekaligus gitu atau di mana cara kita mengukurnya itu? Apakah setengah proses pelaksanaan atau kita melaksanakan di akhir atau sebelumnya gitu? Teknisnya gimana?
Oh, okay. So when the time that we have to, so the first question is regarding if we're using the QTI because he think that it's much better to measure it scale by scale, not all the scales, the 8 scale. That's the first question. The second question is the time to giving them, because you know they have to understand the teachers. Not just directly.
There is, in fact, Theo Wobbles has published some guidelines when to use. At least give 5 to 6 weeks to students to understand the teacher because they have to develop an opinion. The questionnaire asks questions about the behavior, interpersonal behavior of the teacher. So at least give 5 to 6 weeks and only after that administer questionnaire. Now about the scales, I would, keeping in view QTI, like I've read hundreds of papers using QTI, and wherever in world it has been used, it has shown really very high reliability. It depends upon your research questions, the scales you choose, but you don't want to be doing research every time.
Yeah.
Maybe pick up 3 to 4 scales and administer them.
Yeah.
At least 3 to 4.
Iya, boleh Pak,
Because
tapi jangan
otherwise
satu ya.
it may not give you good feedback.
So this Rekha suggestion as well for you, Pak. If you would like to combine like last you mentioned like QTI, CAC, and TOMRA ya, mathematics attitude ya, sikap anak terhadap matematika. Jadi ngambilnya yang QTI yang positif aja, behavior yang positif. Kemudian yang CAC mungkin apa semuanya atau berapa skala aja, attitude yang attitude-nya aja gitu. Jadi nggak akan jadi. Nah, tinggal research question-nya harus tajam karena itu kan akan meng-drive ya seperti apa questionnaire-nya. So probably you would like to share that one, Rekha? I would like to share the
Okay.
what is it? Bapak Ibu, ini publikasi saya dengan Rekha. Ya, Pak Muji udah sering lihat ya. Jadi ini saya mau tunjukin yang penggunaan QTI. Jadi ini waktu itu ini part of RRC grant with Rekha and then my doctoral thesis as well ya. S3 saya juga. Nah, kalau misalnya Bapak Ibu lihat di sini, nah ini saya pakai QTI. Nah, seperti ini Bapak Ibu. Jadi yang tadi Rekha tunjukkan grafiknya ya, gambarnya. Nanti kalau Bapak Ibu Bu Yuli itu apa sih DO dan SO gitu ya. Itu ada Excel-nya, nanti tinggal masukin angka rata-rata min, nanti dibagi 8 ya Pak Edit. Dibagi 8 oke kayak gitu nanti ada grafiknya. Nah, ini di jurnal ini saya tulis misalnya leadership itu tentang apa. Tadi Rekha udah contohin ya itemnya seperti apa ya. Nah, kemudian ini saya mix method. Kebetulan pakai mix method. Ini waktu disertasi project saya ya. Jadi kualitatif dan kuanti. Nah, ini Bapak Ibu bisa lihat. Jadi perhitungan misalnya reliabilitasnya kayak apa, rata-ratanya seperti apa, standar deviasinya seperti apa. Ini saya kerja di sekolahnya ada 3 sekolah. Sekolah yang publik di Australia. Ini salah satu sekolah yang sangat bagus ya, excellent. Kemudian ada juga sekolah publik tapi lebih ke arah multicultural lah gitu ya. Kemudian yang satu sekolah Islam di Australia. Jadi 3 sekolah. Nah, kemudian saya bandingkan 3 sekolah ini Bapak Ibu. Setelah saya bandingkan, kalau Bapak Ibu lihat, ini saya ada profil gurunya ya. Gurunya. Kelewat. Agak susah. Coba saya single page ya. Nah, ini saya bandingkan sekolah 1, sekolah 2, sekolah 3. Jadi pre dan post saya melakukan eksperimen pakai co-teaching, co-generative dialog. Kemudian sebelumnya berapa, postnya berapa. Ya, jadi Bapak Ibu bisa lihat nanti hasil ininya ya, karena ini penelitian di 3 sekolah. Kemudian ada juga kutipan-kutipannya. Kemudian saya mau tunjukkan ininya apa? Susah banget nih grafiknya. Nah, ini profil gurunya Bapak Ibu. Saya bekerja dengan 3 guru. Nah, itu yang saya bilang kanan kiri. Nah, yang pertama tuh kita udah bisa kelihatan. Itu agak sama-sama lah positif negatifnya ya. Tapi lihat guru yang
Yuli, you
kedua.
can talk about the Tina's
Yeah.
profile where it's
Yeah.
more strict and what you saw in the class.
Ya, jadi yang Tina ini itu tuh dia kebetulan dia ini Asian sih memangnya strict. Jadi ini homework harus selesai sekian, bla bla gitu. Nah, itu kita bisa lihat nih dari profilnya dia ya. Ada atau juga yang Emilia. Jadi setiap guru tuh punya kita langsung bisa kelihatan, oh nih bagus nih leadership-nya. Ini bermasalah nih ininya gitu. Nah, ini mau bisa jadi untuk guru, bisa untuk dosen. Yang jadi ini yang diingat-ingat jangan main sebarkan kuesioner tanpa kasih tahu. Yang dinilai itu Pak Edit ya, yang dinilai Bu Alin ya, bukan enggak, karena ketika nyebarin kalau dia ngisi ini siapa yang dinilai, dia bisa aja pikirannya ke semua guru di kelasnya, padahal yang diisi cuma satu. Persepsi satu orang. Jadi tulis dulu nama gurunya siapa. Atau Bapak Ibu karena kepala sekolah mau menilai guru semua guru gitu. Tapi kan tulisan dulu, ini guru biologi kamu Pak ini guru gitu. Jadi anak bisa ngisi berkali-kali tapi dia membayangkan siapa yang dia nilai. Yaitu yang QTI. Yes, Rekha. Bapak Ibu mungkin ini ada yang chat atau silakan kalau ada pertanyaan dan sebagainya.
There was some question from
Suara
Muhammad
Zizu
Saya.
kecil. Ada pertanyaan?
Saya nanya Bu,
Oh ya, silakan.
pakai bahasa Indonesia aja.
Ya.
Ini kan ada dua, ada dominance versus dominance to submission and then opposition to cooperation.
Katanya suaranya kecil di Zoom. Sebentar.
Oh ya.
Sebentar. Bu, coba.
Oke.
Terdengar nggak Bapak Ibu? Yang di Zoom terdengar?
Terdengar, Bu.
Yang
Terdengar,
di
Bu.
Zoom terdengar nggak?
Terdengar, Bu. Terdengar.
Terdengar.
Terdengar ya. Oke, silakan Bu.
My question, actually, I just curious with something. Rekha just explained that if we have some parallel classes, maybe we get different result. It must be different because our student created as a unique being, unique human being, and then there are 16 to 25 students in the classes. So to what extent this result will come into our professionality as a educator, teacher as an educator. Let's say in one classes we have more in the right side than left. In the other classes we have more left than the right side. And then when student assessing us through this QTI, they came from different background. Let's say they came from the family that maybe their parents more permissive, some others maybe very authoritative. So their perception about leadership and the other component will be different. So how can we justify this result to make an analysis and then make a decision or just like suggestion to an improvement for professionalism and then improvement for learning environment? That's one of my question. Thank you.
This is again a very, very good question. As I said, that results in different classes can be different. It doesn't mean that they will always be different, but they can be different. That's why I asked Yuli to talk about the teacher, Tony, where negative behaviors were higher than the positive behaviors, because what happened in that school also had 5 classes, like same year level had 5 classes, and cream of the most academically brilliant students were put in one class. And the class with which Yuli and I, Yuli's PhD study she was working in, had the most students, I shouldn't say incapable, but the students who were not achieving very well in their educational studies. And the pity with that school was that they didn't invest in these students. What they did in that class, every 2 months, the teacher was changing. And these students were going from bad to worse. Instead, if it reflects on school principle, and Yuli has written it in her paper, if principal would have taken these students more seriously, given a consistent teacher, and consistent teacher would have taken these students more seriously and tried to improve the classroom environment, tried to improve the relationship, develop that bond between students and teachers, results would have been very different. So this QTI, when students fill up QTI, it is not a test of teacher. It is only students' perception. Don't take it as personal. It is not personal. It's, you know your value. I know my value. But it is this group's perception about you. And if you have to engage more with them, which are the behaviors where I should put in some effort. One of our colleagues, she did some research in this and asked teachers to do this, Jill Aldridge.
Yeah.
And then if the scale is low on leadership, she asked them to take, you look at the leadership behaviors, which we have in this later on in this PowerPoint. Focus on those behaviors, make them more positive. What we saw after the next semester, not only scores of leadership had changed, scores of helping friendly were more positive, understanding were more positive, and responsibility was more positive. If you focus on one of them, others will also change. And it's only for that class. No, it's not your test. You are a good teacher. If you are employing any teacher who's trying to look at what's happening in my classroom, what type of the environment is there, that teacher itself says that that teacher is motivated and that teacher is ready to make a positive change. Does that answer your question?
We can use it as a room for improvement for our integrity as an educator.
Yes,
Thank you.
very good. Any other question?
Ada pertanyaan lagi Bapak Ibu? Rekha, so if you explain the CAC right now,
Yeah,
probably I
okay.
just share the
How
link.
much time
The
do
link.
we have?
We only have half an hour.
Okay, what I'll try to do is give you presentation on what we did when we developed the classroom emotional climate questionnaire.
Oh, it is Curtin. Ini kampusnya.
Yeah, this is the our
Itu
vice
bagian
chancellor's
belakang.
office is somewhere here.
Kantor rektor sebelah sananya.
Yeah. Why isn't it moving?
The internet or what?
No, I'm connected. Maybe I stop sharing. Maybe I've taken the wrong file.
Tiketnya lebih murah daripada ke Gorontalo ya, ke Perth itu ya. Gorontalo that's too expensive. Tiketnya 4 juta ke Perth, jadi silakan direct 4 jam.
Oh, it happened.
Ke Perth ke Curtin 4 juta. Direct
Now,
return.
why did I do
Return they want to visit Curtin.
all of you? All of you are most welcome to visit Curtin. When you are there, let me know. I'll take you around Curtin. Whomsoever you want to meet there, I will make sure that you have a meeting with that person within the university, if they are in Perth that time, or you want me to make arrangements, I
Yeah.
can make arrangements for your stay.
Ya. Rekha itu wakil dekan.
You
di
want to
di
pursue
Fakultas
your
Ilmu Pendidikan.
PhDs? Come and do PhD with us. Whatever you want. Now, let's move on. When I talk about this classroom emotional climate, we validated this in STEM classrooms. Why did we do it in STEM classrooms? Is mainly because my research is around science and STEM. And to tell you honestly, I developed quite a few units in STEM education in teacher training, master's and B.Ed level units, but I still don't have an understanding of what STEM is. There is no defined definition, but I had applied for some funding, and if I kept STEM, my chances of getting funding was higher than not keeping STEM. And why is STEM important? Because as I said, we are preparing students for jobs, and in Australia, we have skill shortage. We are not getting enough people to work, and most jobs in future will be in STEM space. And Australian Research Council has admitted it, and they were the funding sources for this. There is gender inequity. That's why I looked at the gender differences. Even now, we have only 12% females in engineering. Only 12% females in engineering. And even those who get qualified in STEM field don't work in STEM fields. And we know, like UNESCO has said, that if we invest in STEM education, it will bring up out a better education system for future. And STEM programs can be integrated into many other learning areas. And STEM, I don't see it as a subject. I see it as a skill, which will develop the 21st century learning skills, because they are working in groups, they are working, there is cross-disciplinary collaboration. We give problems, students solve the problems, which raises interest in STEM-related issues and authentic issues, and develops attitudes towards STEM subjects. And that is the focus behind STEM. And we don't know much about integrating STEM and what sort of classroom emotional climate will be developed. We do talk about social emotional interactions between student and student and student and teacher, which also is a part of QTI. And classes with positive classroom emotional climate, what happens there? Teacher understands and cares about the students' needs, students' perspectives, that means student voice is taken into account, and student feels safe to express their ideas. When this happens, students feel more interested in the study. So when it was, I think somewhere in 2016, 17, I first thought of that we have come across such a long way in looking at learning environment research. And we have focused on student achievement, but we haven't thought about student emotion in the classroom. So I did lots of research on if any research around student emotion has been done. There was only one study carried out in Harvard University, funded by Bill Gates Foundation, and it's called Ferguson study. They had looked at emotions, but they had not validated the questionnaire. So what I did, I looked at their questionnaire, which was called 7 C's questionnaire, and study was done by Ferguson. But we also used attitude to STEM questionnaire, or the scale from TOSRA, and we looked at 8 dimensions of care, control, clarity, challenge. Motivation was a new scale added, consultation, consolidation, and collaboration. The 7 scales coming with C's were from the Ferguson study, but the motivation was added based on feedback from students. And we went through many iterations, what can be done, and it was all done in 2019. So what we did before, and this, I had a question. How do we validate a questionnaire? What can we do? See what we did. We, in first stage, we developed the questionnaire and ran it through few experts in the area of education. Then we went to 2 schools where integrated STEM classes were run, year 9s and 10 students. They completed the questionnaire, initial questionnaire. Then we had focus groups with 4 groups of students, like 2 from each school. And they were asked about each of the dimensions of the questionnaire and items that should be changed, removed, or added. And the initial CEC questionnaire was modified. Modified CEC completed by 2 groups. Sorry. And then we took it to another school and we made certain changes. In stage 3, it was implemented in 20 schools and we had problem because we wanted to use it only in STEM classes. We had to choose schools which were running integrated STEM courses and didn't find many schools and like schools who were ready to work with us. So we ended up with 20 schools in 57 STEM classes. We used, so then we did the exploratory factor analysis and confirmatory factor analysis. We looked at the reliability, concurrent validity, discriminant validity, and predictive validity. All statistical tests were done. And something new which we did in this questionnaire, we also used rationalisis to check the validity so that this questionnaire was cross-validated at multiple levels to establish its use for future. So this was the summary. So in stage 1, as I said, we made changes, wording for clarity and readability. We had in Ferguson study, it was a class in this class, but we converted it to personal, I feel in this class. And instead of saying I treat teacher with respect, it was students in this class treat teacher with respect in Ferguson study. But what we did is I treat teacher with respect. So it became a personal opinion of the student. And that's how it was face validated. As I said, I had another researcher working with me who since has moved from Curtin, but I did personally, despite my busy schedule, I went to schools to do the focus group interviews where we used minor changes and expanded the questionnaire to 74 items. The initial was 64 items, and we added a few more items, which is 10 items to this questionnaire.
I would like to add, Rekha. Bapak Ibu, jadi ini kalau Bapak Ibu bikin kuesionernya, kau tinggal pakai nggak kayak gini. Jadi Rekha waktu pertama kali bikin yang, saya udah upload juga di link ya, Classroom Emotional Climate CAC itu juga udah publish ya, publish di LER juga yang tadi di Springer. Nah, itu developnya pertama stage 1 kan udah jadi itemnya. Terus dia pakai face validity, keterbacaan. Kayak biasa kita, terbacaan, kesesuaian. Kemudian makanya ada ahli-ahli lingkungan pembelajaran juga ngecek. Termasuk siswa gitu. Siswa tuh bisa ngebaca nggak itemnya gitu untuk level mereka. Nah, ini di stage 2-nya dia pakai interview ke siswa. Per item ditanya, ngerti nggak itu bahasanya gitu. Ya, jadi itu tahapan pengembangan instrumen sampai jadi valid gitu. Nah, kalau kita mau simple ya kita pakai aja yang udah valid. Tapi kalau emang kita kayak S3 kayak Pak Muji dan bimbingan saya semua harus bikin instrumen baru. Ya begitulah ya, pembimbingnya nih parah. Makanya dia datang aja.
Is he using CEC?
Yeah, EC and QTI. I mean, for the PhD student, they have to develop the adaptation or the new one.
Okay. So may I know who are your students? Is it at university level, school level?
Pak Muji, apa di sekolah apa university nanti pakainya? School.
Scholar, high school, primary?
High school.
High school. Thank you. That's what we did. We validated it in high school. But since then, I'll come back to that as well. We used it for university students as well as primary school students, and it showed good validity. And papers from those research are also published, and I can show you later when maybe tomorrow when we go there. So what did we end up with? We ended up with these scales of consultation, consolidation, collaboration, control, motivation. Although if you remember, I had put care first, but based on the interviews, care came later. Students wanted more of consultation, challenge and clarity, and then attitude. It was adopted from TOSRA, 10 scales from there. And you can see what is the description for each of the scales and sample items. Items were more from student perspective instead of classroom perspective. Moving further, so as I said, we went to larger scale. We had independent schools, we had government schools. For government schools, we had to get ethics approval from Department of Education. That time I was lucky. In 2019, I got ethics approval within 3 months, but now it's become really, really difficult. And we use students from grade 7 to 10, and we had to anonymize all the data. We could identify students because of the ethics reasons, as we wanted to have public school data in it. And that was one of the requirements. So we couldn't give feedback to students or even teachers. My idea was at least I can tell every teacher that how does your student emotional climate look like? But Department of Education didn't let me do that. They said the teachers can be identified and the principal can, stigmatize or pick up on these teachers. So that was the shortcoming of this research. So what did we do? We use factor analysis, and CEC showed the factorability was established at 0.99 and attitude at 0.96, which is that we have an adequate sample size, otherwise, and then we use the Bartlett test for sphericity, which also showed that the item reduction is appropriate. So what happened is we came up with 8-item dimension solution, and where we reduced that 8 dimensions to 7 dimensions, where consultation and consolidation scale were merged. And we had each scale, if you would have seen the earlier slides, had between 8 to 10 items, but we ended up with each scale of only 6 items, except for control, where we ended up with only 5 items, because factor analysis didn't want more than 5 items. That's what it showed, and we kept factor loading above 0.4. And all this I will show you tomorrow when we will go to SPSS and we'll do the data analysis of one data set. And if you go onto the Liri site, Yuli has set up, you have 3 data sets there. And for fun purposes, if you want to play with that data set tonight, feel free. This is how our factor analysis looked like. You see very closely every scale fitted in clearly, and each scale had engine value of more than 1. We didn't pick up any scale which had engine value of less than 1. Then in the same slide, the last item, if you look down, where we are talking about the Cronbach alpha, we established the reliability of each of the scales, and strongly enough, every scale has a reliability value of 9 and above, 0.9 and above, which is exceptionally good. It's really rare to see such high reliability. And that's why I feel this scale, since we had done very strongly looked at the factor analysis and establishing, picked up, changed the language, picked up the scale, the items which were fitting in well, we ended up with high Cronbach alphas, which is the reliability. We also, this questionnaire showed acceptable reliability in, when used with primary schools or university students. And I'll tell you what happened, why we did it with university students. Yeah.
Bagaimana cara kita, misalnya kan kalau di inventory apa KTI itu kan ada 8 skala gitu. Kalau emosional itu ada, misalnya ini kan ada 7. Kemudian kalau Clover itu kan ada 6 skala itu. Bagaimana cara kita memodifikasi itu? Jadi memodifikasi kan nanti kita membuat beberapa dimensi dalam konteks pembelajaran, di lingkungan pembelajaran, misalnya kita meneliti di sekolah Islam gitu. Kemudian kita melakukan modifikasi terhadap inventory yang ada itu kan standar itu. Tapi berdasarkan berdasarkan perbedaan negara, ada perbedaan latar belakang budaya, lalu kita modifikasi ini. Itu dasarnya apa?
Okay.
Itu.
How to choose if he would like to combine three questionnaire, isn't it? CIC, KTI, and Tomra. How to choose the skill? The reasons.
The reasons, that's what is your questions. If your question is with emotions, so which emotions are you going to look at? Are you going to look at consolidation, collaboration, control, motivation, care, challenge, or clarity? And because you will have an overarching objective of your research, but then you will have sub-questions. Your sub-questions, what emotions are you wanting to look at? So that will tell you which scales you will keep in there. Is that answering your question?
Ya, pokoknya research questionnya itu sih kuncinya. Ya, membuat gimana kok.
Yeah. And when we validated this, we did use 4 scales of QTI and these 8 scales. And if you look at this, we also use 10 scales, 10 items of attitude from TOSRA. And when we did the rational analysis, we looked at the person reliability, Pearson separation, raw variance, and unexplained variance. Every item showed reliable results. I'm not an expert on rationalisis, so don't ask me questions there. I know my weakness, but I know how to read it, but I can't do rationalisis. I use SPSS very well. This was my research assistant who had to learn to do it, and now she's an expert on it. So then we looked at the ANOVA and Pearson's correlations. So when we looked at the ANOVA, comparing students' responses from different classes, they were significant at 0.01 level and indicate that CEC questionnaire can differentiate between the classes. That means the correlation is good, and two-tailed correlation between each latent variable of CEC and attitude to questionnaire were all significant and of moderate magnitude. So this was perfect. If you look at all scales, all scores, they are statistically significant at 0.01. So when the multiple regression analysis was done, so it indicated that there was independent association of each latent variable with the dependent variable, and dependent variable in this case was the attitude to STEM. And it's showing all the 7 different these scales with attitude. It was latent. Correlation indicates the multivariate correlation, and coefficient of multiple determination indicates the amount of variance in the latent variables. In a way, I would say 7C classroom emotional climate dimensions and attitude to STEM, 60%, 61% of the variance in attitude is explained by CEC, which is really, really good. Moving further, we also employed MANOVA on this, which had scale of 0 to 100, which is between males and females. If you look at, we had 132 males and 107 females, difference ANOVA and effect size of 0.16, which is very little. Same is with all the other scales. Either we separated the schools, the government schools and non-government schools, which were only co-ed schools. If you know, we had a sample of 600 over students. What we did, the schools which didn't have co-ed education, that data was taken out. Only schools which had co-ed education, that was taken into consideration and looked at, is there difference between genders? But our data shows nothing in care, control, clarity, challenge, other than consolidation showed significant differences, and so did attitude to STEM in government schools. And surprisingly enough, males had better attitude as compared to females in government schools. And that's what we can see. Males are excelling in STEM. It's not telling me what I don't know. I know it, but I do need to work on it. And same is the case with motivation in government schools, where males felt more motivated or significantly higher motivated to study STEM than females did. And what you're seeing later in society is reflecting in schools. That means the teachers in government schools need to do something more to motivate females to come into STEM field. And my research is proving that. Moving ahead, the conclusion is STEM CEC questionnaire fills an important gap, which was in research. It investigates students' perception of classroom emotional climate and focuses, here we focused on only integrated STEM classrooms. We have, validated a 41-item CEC questionnaire with fit between students, 660 students with 7 variables. We did rationalisis, and so did internal consistency, concurrent validity, discriminant validity, and predictive validity, and they are all satisfactory. So what can we do in future? We can, through this questionnaire, we can evaluate the STEM programs. The way we did with this sample, we can do it anywhere around the world. Investigation of classroom climate and student outcomes, differences between student and teacher perception, and any one of you are free to take up this research. Links between different environments, preparation for preferred and actual forms of CEC, which I haven't done so far, and we can have action research to improve classrooms. That's what I personally want every teacher to become. We have so many publications so far out of this questionnaire. And if you look at this Fairhurst, Koul, and Sheffield, Fairhurst was a MPhil student of mine, Nicole Fairhurst, and she used CEC in primary schools. And then there was this one, number 3, McClure, Koul, and Fraser. We used it in university. What happened is, I need to keep my talk short so that your time is over, is Perth, we didn't have much COVID. So Perth closed partially for only 10 weeks in early part of 2020. I think between March and May, we closed for 10 weeks. And after May, everything opened fully. And I really wanted to look at the students' emotions during COVID or during lockdown. We couldn't call it COVID, we called it during lockdown and after lockdown. And that's when I opened it to our university students, and we had an opportunity to validate it further. We had an opportunity to look at students' perceptions during lockdown and after lockdown, and not surprised, students didn't like the lockdown much. Thank you, and any questions, please?
Ada pertanyaan Bapak Ibu yang di Zoom juga ada pertanyaan? Yang di sini cukup? Ya, oke, Pak Lukman, silahkan.
Bu Yuli tadi ini yang CEC kan? Yang
Classroom Emotional Climate.
itu kalau salah nangkap nih nanti dibetulin ya. Jadi instrumennya ini sudah diuji, sudah divalidasi. Sampai tadi saya lihat uji fit analisisnya item itu pakai RAS model kan?
Iya.
Artinya kalau kita gunakan ini sudah
valid.
Sudah valid dan dipertanyakan.
Kata paling tadi nanti ketika kita translate, mungkin kan nanti keterbacaan ya. Sebenarnya yang benar tuh back translation, ditranslate ke bahasa Indonesia ditranslate lagi ke bahasa Inggris. terus meaningnya sama nggak hasil
Oh,
translation.
tinggal itu yang kita
Iya.
katakan.
Kemudian kita ngukur reliabilitas karena kan konsistensi pengukuran different area ya. Misalnya di Australia itu udah reliable.
Iya.
Nah, biasanya kita ngukur reliabilitas aja.
Hmm.
Nah, karena kalau di Australia tuh ngambil dapat data banyak tuh susah ya.
Tapi kalau dia udah pakai uji ras analisis, reliability-nya udah dapat.
Ya, reliabilitas untuk instrumen dalam bahasa Inggris.
Oh gitu. Kalau kita
Ya.
pakai bahasa Indonesia lagi kita
Saya biasanya karena kan bisa jadi translatannya sih biasanya. So when we translate in bahasa, we usually using measure the reliability. Isn't it, Rekha?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the instrument has been valid, so we just do
Yeah,
like
that should be enough.
Yeah.
A factor analysis and reliability should be okay.
factor analysis as well.
Factor analysis.
Oh.
Biasanya kalau di BK kita juga salah satu riset mahasiswa kita itu adalah riset untuk kita menyebutnya mengadaptasi instrumen.
Iya, saya bisa pakai kata itu, adaptasi instrumennya.
adaptasi
Ya,
instrumen, ya.
tapi kan kita terjemahkan bahasa Indonesia.
Iya, jadi adaptasi instrumen itu kan sebenarnya ada langkah-langkahnya.
Iya.
Jadi dia pertama dia harus kalau dia instrumennya bahasa Inggris harus ditranslate dalam bahasa
Indonesia.
Indonesia, kemudian dicek sama ahli bahasa Indonesia
Betul.
apakah dia tepat atau tidak.
Mana?
Kemudian dari translate bahasa Indonesianya dicek lagi ke dalam bahasa Inggris untuk melihat konsistensinya. Baru kemudian kita menggunakan yang mana dari hasil translate tadi gitu ya, biasa diperbaiki lagi. Nah, jadi misalnya kan bisa jadi translate bahasa Indonesia itu dalam pengalaman saya untuk mahasiswa melakukan adaptasi instrumen, kita tuh sebenarnya meminta mereka biasanya lembaga yang lembaga yang cukup bisa dipercaya untuk menerjemahkan, misalnya kayak lembaga penerjemah bahasa Inggris, nggak mesti tersumpah sih kalau untuk anak S1 ya. Jadi itu seringkali memang problem mereka adalah mereka nggak bisa nggak punya konteks istilah itu digunakan gitu. Misalnya sampai sekarang aja sebenarnya saya masih kesulitan untuk mencari istilah yang tepat untuk family abuse, child abuse. Sekarang gini, child abuse dia nggak bisa diterjemahkan sebagai kekerasan anak, karena kekerasan anak child violence. Tapi abuse sendiri itu kan punya konotasi penyiksaan yang disebabkan oleh relasi kuasa, itu ya. Nah itu tuh nggak ada bahasa Indonesianya. Nah seringkali itu penerjemah kita suka ketinggalan ya untuk hal-hal seperti itu. Nah, oleh sebab itu biasanya kalau dosen pembimbingnya yang kemudian akhirnya memberikan semacam pilihan gitu ya dari translate back translate itu yang kemudian dipilih istilah yang mana gitu. Begitu juga penerjemah kita seringkali terutama dari bahasa Indonesia dari bahasa Inggris ke bahasa Indonesia mereka seringkali mudah tidak menggunakan kaidah bahasa Indonesia, tapi menerjemahkan dari bahasa Inggris ke Indonesia. Misalnya bahasa Indonesia itu kan tidak menggunakan kata untuk dua verba. Jadi misalnya saya duduk untuk makan, kan itu nggak ada ya di kita. Misalnya, nah di bahasa Inggris ada, misalnya I sit to eat. Nah di Indonesia itu kan to-nya tuh nggak diterjemahkan mestinya gitu, ada kaidah gitu ya. Nah itu seringkali penerjemah kita agak kekurangan di situ. Tapi masalahnya adalah adaptasi instrumen dia mengharuskan itu dari bahasa asli ditranslate bahasa Indonesia, dicek oleh ahli, diterjemahkan ke dalam bahasa Inggris lagi, dicek oleh ahli yang bahasa Inggris, baru kemudian dia bisa dipakai untuk validitas dan reliabilitas.
Untuk kepentingan publikasi kan nanti kan pengembang instrumennya di awal kan ngecek berarti ya.
Belum tentu. Pengembang aslinya ya.
Pengembang aslinya. Misalnya
Iya.
kita instrumen ini kita adaptasi dari yang dimulai oleh terus hasil riset kita pakai, kita publish berdasarkan verifikasi kita kan.
Iya, gitu. Tapi kalau misalnya dia ngecek apakah instrumennya itu udah cocok secara bahasa, dia belum tentu kan.
Nanti kita harus menambah
Ahli bahasa.
uji bahasa atau apa?
Bukan uji expert bahasa ya.
Jadi feasibility bagiannya salah satunya bahasa. So like Prof Rahayu tuh yang Prof keluar dari Rahayu itu yang udah dia translate terus validasi ke skop. Giliran ada publish Scopus tuh kayak wajib itu yang dilakukan. Nanti saya upload ya. Jadi kita udah berhasil yang kalau yang saya buat sama Rekha itu kan yang C+ itu udah bahasa Indonesia tapi itu buat baru. Kalau saya buat baru. Nah, tapi ada lagi kalau buat dari Rahayu, dia dari Rekha, Wahid, sampai SPOCG itu dari bahasa Inggris ke bahasa Indonesia, kemudian ada publish di Scopus juga. Nah, yang itu ya. Jadi artinya ada dua jenis yang udah kita usahakan, entah dia publish, entah dia buat baru.
Nah, adaptasi.
Tapi buat barunya juga kayak gini, ambil skala di instrumen ini berapa skala gitu, enggak juga sangat baru. Ada juga sih yang sangat baru, cuma beberapa tuh kita modifikasi ngambil skala yang kita butuhkan.
Kalau dimodifikasikan berarti harus
ulang-ulang.
Yang saya maksud yang itu kita gunakan.
Oh, itu reliabilitas aja biasanya.
Iya.
Ini kan stem-nya kan kita nggak tahu stem yang mana. Nah, kita punya riset kan stem kita pakai tambahan variable.
Iya, artinya kalau misalnya dia mau
Sorry.
digunakan untuk bahasa Indonesia dengan menggunakan bahasa Indonesia itu bisa jadi ada dua riset sih Pak sebenarnya kalau misalnya buat publish ya. Jadi kita bisa melakukan adaptasi instrumen yang itu ada modelnya sendiri yang rush model ya biasanya. Misalnya rush model hanya untuk adaptasi instrumen itu bisa publikasi sendiri gitu. Nah, kemudian hasil itu kan kemudian instrumennya jadi valid ya, udah diuji validitas reliabilitasnya. Kemudian instrumen itu dipakai gitu ya untuk ambil data. Nah, itu ada artikel lain lagi gitu loh.
Iya, jadi banyak emang peluang publikasi. Rekha will share about the publication tomorrow little
Tomorrow
bit.
I'll talk about that. That will be the last session.
Nah, kalau if you would like to deep into gitu datang ke Perth ya, visit Rekha at Curtin Uni ya. Ya,
Bisa Bu Yuli ya? Bisa.
join the class
Okay.
workshop. Rekha will give a lot of the environment in Perth as well.
Antara Gorontalo dengan Curtin ya. Oke.
Antara Jakarta dan apa tuh ya. Oke, any question? Udah lelah sekali ya, terima kasih dan saya senang di Zoom pun bertahan ya. Tadi sampai 40 tuh sampai sore, saya pikir setelah istirahat gone, tapi ya tetap stay. Thank you very much for the attention. So Rekha, even in the
Can
Zoom
I-
meeting they are
Can I say
still
something?
Yes, please.
Thank you. And all of you would have written that page in the morning, just leave it here before you leave.
Ya,
If you have written anything, you know.
Ya, jadi Bapak Ibu silakan yang tadi nulis apa ekspektasinya untuk workshop ini bisa diletakkan di meja gitu ya. Nanti mungkin Bapak Ibu yang di Zoom kami mungkin nanti ada link ya yang bisa diisi. Oke, Bapak Ibu yang di Zoom terima kasih banyak ya. Kita akhiri sampai ketemu besok. Besok kita akan punya dataset yang Rekha sudah siapkan. Jadi latihan SPSS begitu ya. Bagaimana paling tidak mungkin yang perhitungan-perhitungan sederhana. Kalau Pak Lukman nggak usah, dia udah sampai rush ya. Tapi buat Bapak Ibu yang ingin belajar nanti kan saya udah kasih link di WhatsApp group. Link kuesionernya udah kami ubah ke Google Drive. Jadi Bapak Ibu silahkan mau pakai buat self reflection. Kemudian nanti share ke mahasiswanya misalnya mengukur classroom emotional climate-nya seperti apa, nanti datasetnya kami serahkan juga ke Bapak Ibu. Kalau tahun lalu kami juga yang hitungkan gitu ya. Kalau tahun ini mungkin kan Bapak Ibu juga ada latihannya ya, improvement sedikit. Oke, thank you very much and then we continue for tomorrow morning ya, 9 o'clock until 3 o'clock and then if you would like to have tea, coffee, and then probably I'm not sure there is fruits or not, Alin. I think there is a snack ya. There is a snack outside as well. Oke, thank you very much. Selamat sore. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.